This example consists of two processes which communicate using message flow. In the top process, a buyer creates and sends a request to a seller. Later in the process, he evaluates the received quotation. The lower process is the counterpart. When the request is received, the process is started. The seller creates and sends a quotation, and he views the answer that has been received from the buyer. The communication via message flow works fine when both processes are executed by the same process engine. However, buyers and sellers usually don't use a common system. How can processes communicate with other processes that run in different systems? Most BPM systems provide access via a REST interface. In our example, the buyer runs his processes in the BPMS from Bonita, while the seller uses Camunda as BPMS. Bonita provides a REST connector which allows us to access the Camunda process. In order to implement this scenario, the seller's process has now been modeled in Camunda and deployed to the Camunda server. The buyer's process remains in Bonita. We have created a support process for the communication via the REST interface. The support process is connected with the buyer's process via message flow. In this way, the technical issue of communicating via REST interfaces is separated from the actual business process. The top process remains unchanged. From a business perspective, nothing has changed, and for the user it doesn't make a difference if the messages are sent directly to the seller process or to a support process which handles the data exchange with Camunda. Unfortunately, there is no common standard for the REST interfaces of BPM systems. Camunda offers many different types of REST calls. We have selected those that are most suitable for this case. In Bonita, the request sent by the buyer's process starts the support process. The first REST call creates a message in Camunda, which starts the seller's process. Here is the configuration of the Bonita REST connector, including the URL and the transferred data in JSON format. The returned data contains, among other things, the process instance ID that has been assigned by Camunda. It is stored in a variable so that it can be used in other REST calls. In Camunda, a user must now create a quotation. With the second REST call, the support process inquires if the process in Camunda has already reached the message catching intermediate event answer received. If this is the case, the task create quotation has already been completed. If it is not the case, the support process pauses a while at the timer event polling interval before it performs another inquiry. If answer received has been reached, the Bonita support process makes another REST call that retrieves the values of the process variables in the Camunda process. One of these values is the proposed price from the quotation. It would be possible to send the quotation also using a REST call. In that case, Camunda would use Bonita's REST interface. However, this would increase the mutual dependency. If REST calls are used exclusively on the buyer's side, there's a dependency only in one direction, so that changes are easier. For example, it would be possible to use another entirely different system for the buyer process. In the system with the seller process, nothing needs to be known about any interfaces on the buyer process side. In the next step, the support process forwards the quotation to the buyer process. Here, the buyer decides whether the quotation is accepted. This decision is sent via a message to the support process, which forwards it to Camunda using another REST call. This REST call creates a message in Camunda, which is catched by the intermediate event answer received. Let's test the example and start the process in Bonita. We order 4 chairs. In Camunda, the seller process has been started automatically and the first task is displayed. It contains the request data. The seller enters a price and finishes the task. On the Bonita side, we have to wait a little, because the support process inquires only every 10 seconds whether there is already a quotation. Now we see the price and we can decide whether we accept it. This decision can be viewed in the seller process. In this way, processes in different systems can communicate with each other using REST. It has the disadvantage that each BPMN system has its own specific REST interface. Therefore, it would be tedious to integrate a different system into this process collaboration scenario. In another video, I will show how a message queue can be used for the communication of processes, so that the involved BPMN systems don't need to know anything about each other's technical interfaces.